Well, hello everyone. Welcome to today's space. My name is Grace, and I am deeply honored to host this important conversation as part of the KWIBUKA31 commemoration, where we gather to reflect, remember, and rebuild the future. As we prepare to begin, I also want to acknowledge and remind people that tomorrow, April 7th, marks the official start of the KWIBUKA commemoration, the day where we reflect on the lives lost during the genocide against the Tutsi, honor the resilience of the Rwandan people, and renew our commitment to ensuring that such atrocities are never repeated. Kwibuka, meaning to remember in Kinyarwanda, is a time for us to unite as a global community to honor the victims of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. It's also a time to reflect on Rwanda's remarkable journey of healing, reconciliation, and rebuilding. As we come together today, we recognize the strength and resilience of the survivors and acknowledge the enduring impact of this tragic chapter in history. Yet, as we reflect on the past, we must confront a harsh and unsettling reality. Genocidal ideologies have not disappeared. They continue to fester, and tragically, we see this most starkly across the border in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where violence and hate are still very, very rampant. In the DRC, genocidal rhetoric targeting Tutsi communities is not only present, but is actively being normalized. The same patterns of dehumanization, incitement, and violence that led to the genocide in Rwanda are still taking root. It is not just a repeat of history, it's history in the making. In a world where genocidal ideologies, especially those targeting the Tutsi, continue to thrive and claim lives, how can we stand by the phrase never again? How do we reflect, remember, and rebuild when the same narratives of hatred and division are still being promoted across borders? How do we reconcile the global commitment to never again when the very ideologies that enabled the genocide of the Tutsis are still being perpetuated today? The cognitive dissonance surrounding never again cannot be ignored. It's not enough to merely say the words. We must challenge these ideologies whenever they manifest, whether in the DRC, Rwanda, or any part of the world where hatred is being cultivated. Never again demands more than just remembrance, it demands a commitment to action, to ensuring that the conditions which allowed such hatred take root are eradicated once and for all. Before we begin, I invite you all to join me in a moment of silence to honor the lives lost during the genocide and to stand in solidarity with survivors and their families. This moment allows us to reflect on the immense pain and loss, but also on the incredible strength that has carried Rwanda to where it is today, and it compels us to take action to ensure that these horrors never return. Hello, Madam Ambassador. Yes, we hear you.
Thank you so much. Apologies.
Oh no, you're good. I was just about to introduce you actually.
Thank you so much, Tanti.
Okay, perfect. So today we are joined by an esteemed panel of speakers who will share their thoughts on the theme of reflecting, remembering, and rebuilding the future. First, we have Mathilde Mukanhava, the ambassador of Rwanda to the USA, whose diplomatic work plays a critical role in fostering international relationships and promoting Rwanda's peace-building efforts. Next, we welcome Bojana Kolibali, a PhD researcher and conflict discourse analyst whose academic expertise shed light on the processes of societal healing and rebuilding in post-conflict settings. We're also joined by Yehoyada Mbangukira, the president of the U.S. Rwanda Community Association, whose work fosters unity within the Rwandan diaspora and strengthens the bridge between survivors and future generations. This space will run for 2 hours. The first hour and a half will be for the speakers, and the last half hour will be for questions. I will now pass on the opening remarks to our ambassador, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you so much for your kind introductions, and good afternoon, everyone who is on the forum. Dr. Bajana, how are you? Dr. Philibert, Yehoyada, the team of One Nation Radio, and everyone, all the friends who are on the forum. So it's really great to be part of this crucial conversation as we are starting to reflect, remember, and reaffirm our commitment to fighting genocide in all its form. This discussion is really timely because the commemoration week starts tomorrow on Monday. Here in the US, we have multiple commemorative events that are planned in different states. One of the main events takes place tomorrow morning at the Capitol here in Washington, D.C., and the other at the United Nations in New York. We have also about, maybe Yehoyada is going to talk about this, but 31 Rwandan community across the US, each organizing a local commemoration. Several academic institutions are already ready to commemorate, including Harvard, the Catholic University in Washington, James Madison, MIT, UC Berkeley, among others, are also hosting the commemoration either in June, in April or May. So a few words I'm going to say, and then we let the panelists expand on those. But reflecting on the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi is not just a national duty; it's a global responsibility. It's even more imperative as the memory of the genocide is under assault by genocide deniers of all kinds who find perverse satisfaction and personal vindication in a fictionalized account of what happened in 1994. Sadly, today we are seeing the truth really being distorted for political or personal agendas. The theme for a conference that just took place in Kigali today, for me, it captures what is going on when it never again fails. Continuation of genocide ideology. That's why remembrance might come with vigilance. As we light the flame of remembrance tomorrow, let it be also a flame of vigilance and hope. Let it be a flame that gives comfort and hope to survivors. Let's continue to reflect, remember, and work together to build a world we can really say never again, even though we have said it many and many times. I don't need to tell you, all of you, because we understand our country and the leadership of Rwanda are doing and have done their part to ensure a better future for all the citizens of the country. So let's do our own part in our schools, in our families, in our place of work and worship, and in our communities. It behooves all of us to stand together for our humanity. Let's not allow those who are trying to scramble our history go unchallenged in our midst. So my plea to you, and especially to young people in the US and elsewhere, is to join hands with other young people of your generation who are actively helping in building a better tomorrow for our nation, but not just for Rwanda, but also for our humanity. So thank you again for organizing this imperative meeting, and I look forward to hearing from the eminent panelists. Thank you again, One Nation Radio and the other organizers of this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your opening remarks. I just, another reminder to follow One Nation Radio. They're going to be posting about the different Kwibuka events that will be happening around the United States and basically all over the world. And I just want to give a brief summary on what the ambassador said and put an emphasis on the fact that she talked about reflecting on the past is not only a personal responsibility, but a global one, right? And we're seeing that the memory of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis is under direct assault, right? And genocidal denial is spreading, and the truth is being distorted by those with personal agendas. And distortion, when unchecked, enables hatred and to persist and repeat itself. So education and truth are the pillars of preventing such atrocities, yet both are under attack. And denial and distortion of history create this fertile ground for genocidal ideologies to take root once again. So I'm just going to pass this next question to Bojana. With your expertise as a conflict researcher, what are some of the key historical and social factors that led to the 1984 genocide against the Tutsis, and how do these same factors continue to resonate in the current conflict in the DRC, especially in the context of denial and education or the lack thereof?
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, Honorable Ambassador Mukantabana, for the warm welcome, for your words of comfort for the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, and for your call for a need to reunite, to remember, and renew at the occasion of this 31st commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi. And thank you, One Nation Radio, for gathering us here and for organizing this important commemorative event. And thank you, Grace, for your opening question. So we are here gathered to reflect, remember, and to rebuild the future. As a teacher, I like to bring context that allows us to reflect on ways to move forward. So while answering your question, I would like to state a few historical facts that have been documented and have become common knowledge. So the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, where 1 million lives were lost, was a direct result of the colonial governance in the region. This governance, established post 1884 1885 Berlin Conference, was later overseen by Belgium. It fostered ethnic division and Black on Black racism through what we call the Hamitic myth, which shifted social categories, Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa, into racial categories. Belgium, fearing a loss of influence upon independence, propagated the exclusion of Tutsi under the guise of a so called social revolution or democratization, leading to their dehumanization and eventual targeting for elimination. This discriminatory ideology fueled extremist groups to carry out targeted killings against the Tutsi from the late 1950s to the 1990s, resulting in mass violence and displacement. The Habyarimana led Rwandan government, supported by France, further exacerbated the situation by orchestrating violence not only against the RPF and the returning refugees who came to fight for their survival and for the return, but also against all individuals identified as Tutsi. I would like to add that the same social groups of Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa in eastern Congo and Burundi were also manipulated along racial and political lines post the Berlin Conference, perpetuating the colonial legacy of division that continues to impact the region to this day. So, on the second part of your question, in terms of how these factors impact us today or impact the region, how they resonate in the current situation. As my colleague, Dr. Alex Muka, has also reaffirmed in a few of his recent interventions, including this morning at the KWIBUKA 31st International Conference in Kigali, I would like to insist on the fact that the genocide against the Tutsi was stopped within the national territorial limits of Rwanda, but it was relocated into DRC by the genocidaire with the support of successive Congolese leaders and the international community, today targeting both Rwanda and its people and the Congolese Tutsi. We are dealing with a pervading genocide ideology, which is not something that we can eradicate easily. And it is accompanied by what Ambassador said earlier, which is a pervading presence of denial, of genocide denial. What happened following the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, and what are the factors that have direct impact on the situation today? So Congo, or ex-Zaire, allowed genocide perpetrators to settle near the Rwandan border, arming and organizing them to destabilize Rwanda with support from the international community. The genocidal forces hid their identity under the political cover of first RDR, Rassemblement pour le Retour de la Démocratie au Rwanda, using refugee camps as bases to attack Rwanda and incite hatred against Congolese Tutsi, supported by the Congolese government. Rwanda raised concerns to the international community, but due to their inaction, Rwanda took action itself to secure refugees and dismantle genocidal bases in the DRC refugee camps. The genocidal forces that remained in Congo morphed into ALIR, Armée pour la Libération du Rwanda, spreading their ideology in the DRC, attacking Rwanda and Congolese Tutsi, again backed by the Congolese government. We have multiple examples of Congolese leaders, in this case, for example, Abdoulaye Yerodia Ndombasi, who publicly incited violence against Tutsi in 1998, calling them vermin and microbes, thus perpetrating hatred and discrimination. More recently, we heard instances of some hate rhetoric by DRC MP Justin Bitakwira, calling Tutsi devils, snakes, and natural-born criminals. Successive DRC governments supported genocidal forces, allowing them to exploit resources, expand their base, and spread their ideology of hate against Tutsi. Now, FDLR, Force Démocratique de Libération du Rwanda, evolving from RDR and ALIR, continued promoting genocide ideology, facilitated by Congolese leaders to exploit resources and support the government of DRC, perpetuating violence and control in the East while targeting Congolese Tutsi communities. So, despite Rwanda's and M23's call for action, the international community has overlooked the plight of the victims, instead imposing sanctions against M23 and Rwanda. So, I'll keep it to that for now, and then we can continue on other aspects.
Thank you so much for giving us that brief context and explaining to us the ways in which the same playbook essentially is being seen at play in neighboring countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, and that the genocide stopped in what's known as today territorial Rwanda, but continues to be is pervaded in other regions in Africa. And I'm just going to switch the next question to Yehoyada, who's here with us as well. He's a community leader in the United States, and he works with the diaspora. And since we're on talking about education and how education is a tool that's going to be used to stop the perpetuating genocidal ideology, can you talk a bit about the mission of the USCRDA and ways in which the diaspora can engage in this global war that we're fighting today?
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me here, Madam Ambassador, Professor Bojani, and others, and you, our moderator, and the One Nation Radio team and Daily Times. And I hope you can hear me well. I'm grateful to be here. And one of the things that as a leader of the community here in the United States, we have over, I'm guessing, over 15,000 of us who live here. And one of the main things that we want to make sure that is not lost is that honoring victims and acknowledging these events is a way of honoring the memory of the millions of individuals we lost in 1994. Even beyond that, the idea of preventing future atrocities comes through learning, sharing, and honoring those memories, promoting tolerance and understanding, and historical accountability, and then the collective memory, the cultural and collective memory. These events help shape national identities and collective memories, and then inspiring action. And you just alluded to the never again mantra that is spoken of, but very little action. Really, you wonder today, in this day and age, how the situation could be devolving in the eastern part of the Congo. And action we need to enact is whereby everyone, the young generation that is coming up among these members across these 31 communities, as Madam Ambassador alluded to here in the United States, we need to be mindful that there are generations from that event, from the atrocities of 1994, that need to be reminded, though they may not have been survivors there, but second generation, third generation survivors will emerge, whereby they need to carry on the message of tolerance and honoring these victims. And so the USRCA as a collective, we are determined to always have these events, invite as many people within the communities where we live, and have them share the experience with us. Because you see, sometimes, as Mr. Weisel would say, once you've heard the stories, you become a witness. You become one that can carry the message forward. And that is what we do in our communities. We
Hello? Is it me or did his mic just stop? Can you guys hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Rename?
Oh yeah, sorry. I think
Yeah, to
yeah, you cut off for a bit there. The last thing we were.
for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry, I'm sitting steady. So we want to make sure that what is going on today in the Congo in particular, there may be other atrocities around the world that we may not be focusing on, but the situation in the Congo where it has been redefined, whereby I think last week I heard one of the uh, people in the Congo calling it double genocide, where they're saying this M23 killed Hutus in it's a bizarre connection, or even trying to sanitize what actually is going on. And so our communities are determined to continue to remember, unite, and as we do that, these next several weeks, we have the 31 communities. They will all be actively meeting. Some communities, like in Texas, will come together as we have 4 communities in Texas. They'll come together as one, and they'll bring all their friends to hear, listen, and experience, meet even some of the survivors. So, thanks for the question. And that's what the mission is: education, remembrance, and make sure that next generation carries on from where we are. If we're faithful today, they will be faithful in letting the world they live.
Hello.
Yes,
Can
yes, Grace.
Okay, I think he was just cutting off, or maybe it's my network. Sorry about that. But thank you so much for sharing your insight and the role that the diaspora community plays in ensuring that genocide denial does not persist. And as we've been discussing, genocide denial and historical distortions allow ideologies of hate to persist and grow, and this leads to further violence. And one of the critical lessons that we learned from Rwanda is the need for effective early warning systems that can identify the warning signs of impending conflict and take action before atrocities unfold. I was tuning into the KWIBUKA31 International Conference earlier on, and Alison Derritu mentioned how at the time she remembers, I don't remember how old she was at the time, but she remembers the news headlines that they would see on the news, the news clippings, everything that was talking about what was brewing in Rwanda, that a genocide was about to happen, that something was going on, but nobody did anything. And essentially the same is happening right now, right? And with the ongoing violence in the DRC, which has now become a regional conflict, it's clear that we need to learn from the past. And early intervention is crucial in preventing further escalation. So this next question is for Bojana. Could you share some insights on effective early warning systems, and how might the lessons from Rwanda guide international or regional organizations in conflict prevention, particularly in addressing the current conflict in the region? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And indeed, former USG Alice Daritu did explain this morning also that the Office on Genocide Prevention was established in 2004 as a direct response to the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. And yet, when the same community is now facing targeted violence by the same perpetrators in a neighboring country, where the role of the office is to raise awareness within the UN about the risk of genocide and therefore prompt preventive action, no meaningful steps have been taken. Instead, the target community finds itself unjustly blamed for the situation at hand. But so that I would say that there are many warning systems that have been in place. And I think at this point we have more or less kind of resorted to even the next steps, which is some resolutions that have been put in place. So I'd like to actually just list a few of them. because there are actually numerous international resolutions that have been put in place following 1994 to particularly address the threat posed by the genocidal force FDLR. Since, like I was saying, we in a way that has not been that issue has not been finished or addressed, and therefore we're still dealing with that threat. So some of those resolutions include the 2007 Nairobi Joint Communique between DRC and Rwanda, the UN Security Council Resolution 1804 in 2008 and 1896 in 2009, imposing sanctions and monitoring mechanisms against FDLR. There's also the Peace and Security Cooperation Framework signed in 2013 in Addis Ababa. Notably, there's also notably the creation of the UN Force Intervention Brigade within MONUSCO in 2013, which was aimed to neutralize M23. And that was M23, sorry, and FDLR. So the neutralization of M23 was achieved, but the same was not done for FDLR. So not only did MONUSCO's FIB fail to neutralize FDLR, but now MONUSCO is actively collaborating with FDLR in a military coalition, supporting their attacks on Congolese Tutsi and also Rwanda. So, despite existing resolutions and peace agreements, the international community has chosen to ignore Rwanda's and M23's grievances, opting to protect their own interests instead. This biased stance fuels tensions and emboldens the DRC to act with impunity. Again, it is widely known that FDLR perpetrated genocide in Rwanda. Despite decisions and resolutions being in place, there's a lack of implementation or acknowledgement of Rwanda's legitimate security concerns arising from the failure to enforce these resolutions and agreements. Um, Members of the international community are driven by self interest, as Congo's mineral wealth holds significant value, and that leads them to prioritize economic gains over regional peace and stability. So while in November 2022, Alice Warimun Deritu, so former UN Undersecretary General on Genocide Prevention, she issued a statement warning that the Congolese Tutsi and the Banyamulenge communities are facing targeted ethnic persecution with a high risk of escalating to genocide. So despite this alarming declaration, the UN failed to take any action. In a concerning turn of events, the UN supported Democratic Republic of Congo has been supplying arms to groups like FDLR, Wazalendo, and even European mercenaries, enabling the continued persecution and violence against the Congolese Tutsi and Banyamulenge population. So it's quite ironic that the Office on Genocide Prevention was actually created following 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. And then now that we're dealing with the situation that is basically a continuation of the genocide against the Tutsi, that same office is unable to create action, although a lot of resolutions have taken place. Again, the international response is largely influenced by national interests, as evidenced by the composition of the UN Security Council itself. The UN Security Council, which holds the authority to take action, consists of powerful member states with vested interests in the region. So, of course, this includes the permanent five countries, the United States, which is the largest contributor to the UN peacekeeping missions like MONUSCO. There's France, which is the pen holder of UN resolutions on the DRC with significant African interests as a former colonial power. We have the UK, another major former colonial power in Africa. China, heavily involved in securing mineral deals in the DRC, and Russia providing private security services in Africa. So these nations have a keen interest in the mineral resources abundant in Congo, crucial for their key industries such as electronics, green energy, and security. But also, aside from strategic minerals, the security and humanitarian sectors also profit from the region's instability, conflict, terrorism, and the resulting humanitarian crisis. So I would say while there are warning systems in place, I think the UN Genocide Convention was also created for that purpose. We've seen that these warning systems were not um, basically effective during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. and then we see the same thing happening today. So I would really like to stress on the importance of not just uh, not just using these warning systems to create action, but also to think in terms of how we can make these warning systems effective today, to be able to prevent and repress any form of atrocities, and particularly genocide.
While we're still on that point, can you elaborate or expand more on ways we can make these warning systems effective?
So I think that one thing that we was also discussed this morning in the actually this afternoon in the international conference, the KWIBUKA 31st International Conference in Kigali, is that some of these countries that have vested interest in Africa are not the best to understand not only what's at stake. I think the former German ambassador was saying we have a hard time, receiving information. Again, in 1994, I also remember that the special rapporteur who was there in 1993 was telling me. I invited him to a seminar with my students, and he was saying that there was no internet at the time, so they had to. He wrote his report, printed it, but it just stayed on a desk, and no one was reading it. Of course, we had enough elements that were warning about what was going on, but today, the information itself, which is mainly disseminated online, is so the conventional media is being complicit in many ways, because more and more journalists are not going on site to investigate, but they're sitting in their newsroom and just sharing information that is orchestrated, biased, and that follow a certain narrative. And therefore, I think the information that people are receiving is also covering up the real information. So the warning systems have to be, what I'm trying to say is that warning system have to also be locally based, Africa led. I think that the regional mechanisms can serve as a better system, or a more effective system for warning, for warning and also action itself. That means that intergovernmental organizations or entities like AU, EAC, or SADC need to be independent, self-funded, so that they can act as needed. Because again, the ICGLR, for example, was also put in place so that each country has its own committee on identifying these warning systems, and also implementing resolutions and actions. But as we see, it's still ineffective, since some of those entities are even being drawn into conflict, as we've seen with the SADC force, I mean DRC, for example, as we've seen how the EAC entity itself was forced to withdraw, and as we see also MONUSCO being part of the problem itself by um, fighting alongside not just government, which is involved in a state persecution against a community, but also which invites the genocidal force FDLR, all the other armed groups that are called now under the umbrella of Wazalendo, but also European mercenaries against international condemnation of the use of mercenaries. So I think I'll stop it to that.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for unpacking that with us. I'm going to just throw it back to Yehoyada for a brief moment here. And in terms of community efforts, what role does the USS CRDIA see for international collaboration in addressing the ongoing challenges that we've been talking about?
Yes, thank you for that question. Of course, these commemorations are very important. And so these allow us, as I said earlier, into the spaces that would otherwise not be heard. And so we invite people to come to these events. And the other thing that we have noticed is that when we have these events, as I said earlier, at academic institutions, it works very well. And Madam Ambassador will attest to the fact that last year, Sac State University in Sacramento State University offered a space on their grounds to erect a monument to commemorate and memorialize this genocide against the Tutsi, and that is something that we are going to undertake to fundraise and build that monument so that we have a physical representation of 1994. And so we encourage, there are scholars, researchers that we partner with that do come to these events to continue to educate and then find a way to within the communities for advocacy, because sometimes these victims are silent. And we are grateful that we have KWIBUKA USA that has active engagement with the survivors. For each community of the 31 communities, there is a group of these actual survivors that need to be supported not only just during the commemoration season, but from day to day, and be able to have the support that they need. And one area that we are embarking on that we have been trying to drum up the past few weeks because of the current events in the DRC, was to engage communities on social media, do social media campaigns, come up with hashtags that would indeed cause curiosity, educate, and counter the narratives that are distorting. And so with that, there is each community we have started to find key elements and reaching out to even civic organizations, even to government entities. And many communities have partnered with local city governments, state even, to whereby they have etched the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi into their documents, to where they get to honor and remember those days during their sessions during this season. As the ambassador mentioned earlier, that they will have these events tomorrow in this capital city of the nation. So we want each community to be able to have something similar to that in each state. So the communities that we have continually find a way to engage with the officials, and we'll continue to support that. And those are things that we want to encourage so that we can get traction. So when news comes from sources that we don't endorse, they can at least check with us at the Rwandan community and get the facts, because facts of late get distorted, and if there's no one to contradict them, they become reality. As they become reality, when we come later, they'll be already conditioned to think that we are trying to revise facts. But the facts that are trying to be revised, we want to counter those. And that is the mission that we want to perpetuate and encourage in each community, so that we do not find ourselves on a reactive side, but become more proactive. And that's what we are helping each community, emphasizing each community to make that a priority. Thanks again for the question.
Thank you for that. I think I have, obviously, without giving out my age, but I am on social media quite a bit, and I see a lot of the discourse that has been going on. And social media is a double-edged, tool in a sense. I recently saw photos, and it was a Congolese journalist basically stating that civilians were killed by M23, and the photo that was used to show those victims was a photo from Banyamulenge women that were killed a couple of years ago, right? And you see the number of retweets at the bottom of that post in support of what that journalist is clearly stating is, it's not true. Like, that photo is used from different victims, and it's being spread around multiple times. So I think it's great that you have this system in check for the younger generations in our community who don't have either, like, the resource or the knowledge that older folks in our community have. So it's great that they have that tool that the community provides. On that same note, you left us at a great point to segue into our next question, which is the role of politics of memory and the role of the media, right? Bojana mentioned that there are some, like, big news channels that will not go into these conflict zones, right? They report what they're given, and sometimes the message that they're going to give is not on the side of the truth, right? And so with this in mind, how important is collective memory in preventing the recurrence of violence, and what is, according to you, the role of education and the media in fostering mutual understanding and preventing the spread of hate narratives?
And that question is to me?
No, it's
Or
for both of you. Rosanna can go first, and then
okay.
you can answer.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yes, there are several topics here. I think one important first, I would say, subject is the idea of politics of memory. Politics of memory, what we call politics of memory, usually is the I would say the system that a state, a nation state, puts in place to remember and commemorate events that are of a national importance. And it is very, very important for a moment like the one that took place in 1994 to continue being learned about, to continue being commemorated, because otherwise the new generations are lost and cannot really relate to their history and to know how to rebuild the future. Often I use the example of Nigeria, where the Biafra War was never really commemorated or discussed about. It is not present in historical books, and there's no politics of memory in Nigeria that commemorates that moment. And yet, about 3 million people lives were lost. There are also events in other countries that are not being commemorated, and that leads to a repetition of or a recurrence of these events. Um, I think that especially the legacy of colonialism is extremely strong and present in many countries in Africa, if not the entire continent. And it is very important to use the tools that we have to be able to learn, to educate, and to avoid repetition. Um, Thinking in terms of how, for example, a country that is struggling to survive, whether economically or in terms of security, we can imagine that it is very difficult to use any type of tools to show the history of the place. I'm thinking even about when I went to Ruchuru recently. There are many places in Ruchuru that can be used to show the legacy of colonialism, but also the history of Ruchuru and Masisi areas. And yet, at this time, because the situation, I mean, for the past 30 years, this region has not been developed enough or has not experience stability, it is impossible to even start teaching the younger generations about their past and about the realities. They end up actually getting informed on social media, which, as you said, Grace, is a double-edged sword. We could get some information, but it could be distorted, and images speak a lot about how we see and how we perceive ourselves. Therefore, there's a lot to learn In terms of the media, so we have had a distorted narrative since 1994, more or less, in the region. And it goes back to the situation or the context that I was providing earlier. On the continent, there are very few news agencies that are that are locally owned or locally based, that are informing the continent. So most of the countries in Africa learn about events from international news. And in this case, it's a mix of interest, national interest, but also ignorance. When we're sitting in a newsroom, let's say even in South Africa, and we're getting information from Reuters and AFP about Congo, we can imagine that there is a possibility of distorting a lot of information within that. And then we have news that are, or news outlets or platforms and radios that are directly relaying propaganda. I'm thinking here even about the conflict of interest that represents Radio Okapi, which is the MONUSCO radio, so called for peace. But Radio Okapi is relaying the same type of propaganda that Kinshasa is relaying. And that goes with the fact that most of the journalists that are in the region are themselves or may be threatened by the repressive, the kind of repressive governments that is Kinshasa at this time. I've spoken to a few of those journalists who openly said that they were offered payment in exchange of supporting this propaganda and relaying it. And so they have only these two options. So, talking about the conventional media, as far as I'm concerned, for so I'm originally a researcher, academic researcher, a scholar, and for 3 years since I started working on hate speech in the region, I've been contacting journalists and asking them if they could go on site, report from the region, so that we could know more about what was happening. And this is since beginning of 2022 or mid 2022. We've had a UN group of experts reports. Once I started digging into how they also receive their information, most of them are not locally moving around. They make phone calls to local contacts, and those local contacts have themselves or either part of groups or have their own interests. For example, the Lucha civil society movement, which is known for its hate speech against the Congolese Tutsi, are themselves serving as these contacts. And then, of course, MONUSCO, which is involved in the conflict itself, is also serving as a contact or is collaborating directly on these reports. Therefore, it's really difficult to receive information. And even if when we have the information, the analysis of that information is also becomes biased. I'm thinking about a lot of those UN group of experts reports that always start with the assessment that the violence is being perpetrated by groups like FDLR or even the National Army, and other armed groups. And then when we get to the conclusion, it often, these reports often blame the victim or say that it is because of the presence of M23 that these victims are being targeted. I think once again, former USG Alice Deritu was saying this morning how M23 didn't exist before 1994, and it is a consequence of what happened. So just to at least finish for now on this question of the media, the conventional media has somewhat been replaced by social media, or at least the conventional media is also sharing information on social media, and less and less um, rigor on the ethics or the standards of journalism are being applied. And that's also the case for all the big news and big media, um, like Al Jazeera, CNN, etc., BBC, The Guardian. They've been all invited to come, but they waited until we decided to go on site. And this is where I ended up having to serve almost as a journalist, going to investigate on site and trying to give voice to the other side so that we can have a more balanced information. It is very difficult to have a balanced analysis or a neutral, or let's say an objective analysis or information if we're not going on site. And one last thing, a lot of the Western news outlets, like we've seen after the fall of Goma, where so when I was there right after the fall of Goma, big groups of Western journalists arrived, but very often because of the bias that they have been brainwashed with in the first place, they came for some type of confirmation of that bias, looking for chaos, bodies, and blood, rather than trying to look at in a humble way, trying to learn from what they see and trying to report objectively. For example, Rubaya, when I went there with my colleagues and peers, we realized that they haven't seen a journalist, especially a Western journalist, since 2019. So when everybody's reporting on Rubaya saying that it's the world capital of strategic minerals, and that Rwanda is looting, or Rwanda is is at least having their interests over there. It is completely unimaginable when we go to Rubaya, because to begin with, to get there, it becomes near impossible. There's no road. It's a completely artisanal mine, and there's so much to learn from talking to people there that any journalist would have to stay for weeks to get to understand the story. So I think the media is taking shortcuts and distorting not just truth, but eventually it distorts the reality. And we've had these genocide denial theories that have been going around, like we heard earlier about double genocide theory, which has become predominant in reports in the news, but it has become mainstream, which is really a problem for the communities that I've met, that have been for 30 years, several times exiled because of the presence of genocide ideology and genocidal forces that have been persecuting, attacking them, looting their livestock, killing members of their families. To the most recent times, actually, there are a lot of refugees in refugee camps in Rwanda, because it's a safe place to go to, who've lost all their family members in the past 5 6 months, killed with machetes by the armed groups supported by DRC government. So I think 1994 is not a finished story in the region, because these borders are not really borders that are separated. If we take Goma itself, you can sit in Gisenyi, you can see Goma. You could almost call a neighbor. Um, it's that close, and there are hundreds of thousands of people who cross these borders every day, doing business and going to see family members and so on. So it's really difficult to say that 1994 is over. Thank you. That was maybe a long answer.
Oh, no, that was great. Yoyada, you can go ahead and answer as well.
Yes, thank you for that narrative. Yes, one of the things I wanted to mention was because of the situation in DRC, it prompted us to find a way to be rather fast because, as you said earlier, social media has become the newsmaker. And one of the things that we noticed was that we failed, I must say, to recognize Congolese Rwandans in the United States. We are not quite aware, all of us not quite aware at the same time of who they are per se. We hear about the Nyamulenges, but there are those who are not Nyamulenge, who are Rwandaphones, who live here in the US. and they have an organization called Isoko that helps to keep them updated. And so I think with our approach to see, even reaching into the Nyamulenge community, reaching into the Rwandaphones of the Congo who live here in the United States, we can bond together because our stories are intertwined in a way that we are targeted equally. And when I say we, because they are Rwandans, they are our relatives. And I just happen to have the privilege of having been born in the Congo. And so it is not something I'm told about who lives in Congo. I lived in Goma. I was born in the Lubumbashi area, and I lived in Masisi. So I know that we have ancestral roots in that place because what has been alluded to, the Berlin conference that divided up these lands arbitrarily. So what we want to do as well in our outreach and creating content, we have some bright minds that are working on that in our Rwandan rapid response team, whereby we can produce content and reach into those communities that we share what I would call victimhood, as bad as that may sound. But the fact is, 1994 was is replayed in the Congo, and maybe we did not act soon enough to highlight the fact that these are our brothers and sisters that we have watched demonized and basically put to the side and killed. So that's one thing that I just wanted to add to this: the politics and the influence that narratives, these news medias may not be delineating so that we can be educated. Education is key. Once we understand who is doing what, we cannot make the Rwandaphones in the Congo all M23 guerrillas. That's just a terrible narrative because the news lumps M23 into the conversation as if they are alien people who came from some outer space and landed in Congo to create trouble. These are Congolese by birth, by origination, who just want to be left to live a full life. But they're being targeted because of their ethnicity linked to Rwanda, the country as we have it today, but many cross interconnectedness that we need to bring to the fore so that people understand those are Congolese who just happen to speak Kinyarwanda. They are not invaders to disrupt. They want to live in peace. They don't want to be killed. And that narrative, that education is key to how we move forward here in our communities. And I will urge all our 31 plus communities that are informed right now and those that are in the process to indeed include these other individuals in our communities, and let's partner with them so that we can have a joint collective voice, because it matters that this is clarified so it's not revised by someone who does not know what they're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want us to stay in this social media conversation just a bit more and unpack it, because in the past we did rely heavily on established journalists and trusted media outlets to report the truth, and the truth in quotes. However, today we do see a shift where researchers or activists or even regular civilians are, stepping forward to witness and report the reality on the ground. And in many cases, they're doing it outside traditional media structures like TikTok, Twitter, and other social media sites that have become battlegrounds essentially for misinformation and hate speech. So these platforms, while providing a space for new voices, have also become a cesspool of distortion, and harmful narratives thrive and spread quickly and they go unchecked. So given this context, how can we ensure that the truth is not only preserved but also communicated effectively, especially when so much of the reporting today is done outside traditional media outlets? It's a question for the both of you.
I'll let the professor go first.
Thank you. I think it's actually part of your former question that I didn't answer to, but I think education is really key. By education, we mean not just having institutions in place, it means also having a curriculum in place, and that goes back to the politics of memory is how do we inform in our schools? But there's also, I think, something very important is how do we address a particular audience? What has happened in particularly in academia is not only there's of course different divides between European countries doing academia, but also, let's say, North America. There are different styles of doing academia or gathering scholarship and analyzing it because it's a different audience. There are different languages. There are all those divides that are also present on the continent itself. There are a lot of different economic factors. One example is, for example, Senegal used to be a hub for education for all the former Francophone colonies, so post independence. And until the structural adjustment policies were put in place, where education was privatized and there was less and less investment in that education. And therefore, nowadays, the educational system is not as good. It's actually has a lot of issues compared to before 1990. So a lot of factors can impact the educational system or educational stability. And then when it comes to the Western world and where we are basically facing the fact that we provide information and knowledge while at the same time being decision makers for the rest of the world. Again, going back to member states, for example, such as so powerful member states such as the United States, the UK, France, but also other European countries with the EU, we realize how academia itself is very limited for a number of reasons. First, there is the monopoly of information. There is, of course, the cultural biases. There are the personal interests or interests of national interests that can be also used in specific institutions or specific bodies or centers. And then there is also the lack of oversight as to the type of people that are going to, let's say, peer review for academia, a particular article. So we're going to have these monopolies of different academic forces that are, again, politically driven. Um, and Congo has had its own centers, such as the Congo Research Group, which has its own sub-centers, such as Ebuteli and formerly the Kivu Security Tracker, that are, I would say, academically hosted, but they're not producing academic work. However, they do have the monopoly of that peer review process, and therefore it restrains academics to publish any other type of information than the one that they are promoting. And so, to come back to the audience, is the issue of academia, which is, let us say this, the location of production of knowledge, is that they produce work that is not accessible to the wide audience. The idea is not to produce TikTok videos, although that could be actually very useful to inform the younger generations. But sometimes when we're producing articles that are 30 pages long, that can be excellent, extremely well documented, they tend to be inaccessible for the wide audience, whether because of the language that is being used, or also because it's just impossible to have the time to read and to remember what is written in it. So I think one shift that needs to be taken place in education and in information is to a little bit more adapt, sorry, to the current world, the digital era, also the fast-pacing world that deprives us from the possibility of being able to read long texts. And I always use myself as a perfect example. I had to read at least 500 books for my PhD dissertation, and now I can't even find the time to read one book in a year, because we're all just constantly taken by other activities and everything is moving so fast. So we need to find a way to have accessible information, quality information that is accessible to all, particularly the younger generation. So use interactive activities and tools that allow us to educate in a more accessible way. Um, and what I would like to add too is that this goes along with the type of training that we need to offer. I think there's a lack, at least on the continent, if we want to have what we call epistemological decolonization, where the information is endogenous rather than exogenous, or provided from the inside, dealing with inside issues. We need to also put more effort in building educational programs that are done in local languages, for example, but that are also being able to open to the external world. There are many studies that have been done. Often, what we think on the continent, for example, is that in order for us to be able to partner with the outside world, we need to teach in French and English. And yet, studies have shown that children learn better in their native language in primary schools, and then they can open up to other languages. But that's why it's very important to teach in local languages, because when you're a child who speaks a mother language at home and then it comes to school, it has to learn a new language and all the material in it, it becomes really difficult. So educational systems have to be more adapted to the local systems, and we need to develop more of that that is tailored to the region. I'm thinking about the leadership University of Governance, or the African University of Governance, or School of Governance, sorry, in Kigali, which is really tailored to learning about governance given the history of Africa. So it's educational systems that are more tailored to local needs.
Thank you so much for that. Yoyada, you can go ahead and.
Yes, thank you again. I think the more important, and most of what the professor just said, I agree with. What our challenge is today, that we get accessible information. As she mentioned, scholarly journals may not be what we need in the immediate, and I think also the push, or at least the ask that we're asking community leaders here in the U.S. is to find those young people within the community that we can provide real time in real time information that is coming down, because the distraction that we have here, if we cannot put it in sound bites and educate ourselves, the adults, the leaders of the communities, we cannot educate the young ones who are actively on these social media platforms. So if we can get that information into the hands of the young ones, not only do they learn about it, they share it widely. And we need to get the information that is current, truthful. One of the challenges that we have here with this social media is, what is true? How can we verify the truth versus the lie, the alternative facts? The only way we can do that proactively is when we, as leaders, indeed invest in that time, find these professors to give us like real information that we can give to the communities in small bites, and then bring in a larger community. Because the problem we have today is things are very lightning fast. And once it's on social media, that's not the time to check its veracity. It should be checked before it's posted. But who is posting and who can counter that? That is the challenge that we are working through to figure out how can we do that. Once we can reliably provide on time, real good information, touch base with people on the ground, even if we can find those individuals who can give us real information that is usable and factual, then we minimize the noise that comes that is not factual. And we've seen a whole lot of that. And that is, I think, for us as a community here in the United States, is to refine that, because we're like she said, we don't have the access to these academic writings, and academic writings do not come out every day, in the sense that they are part of the news. They are part of the sit down, read this 16-page journal, or 20, however many pages it might be, to get that sense of what's the history, what's going on, what's the implication, and why should I get involved? Those are things that we want to emphasize within the communities so that we are fed and we share appropriate information, let it go out, get it retweeted multiple times, but at least get a source that is reliable. And that, to me, seems to be a better tool to educate the masses and get more people involved. Thank you again for the question.
Thank you both so much for your thoughtful responses. So we're just going to use the last couple of minutes that we have to pass it on to the audience. We ask that you keep your questions brief. If you're going to ask a question, state that you're going to ask a question, and before you ask your question, please introduce yourself and let us know where you're calling from. And if you're wanting to make a comment as well, let us know that you're making a comment, and so on and so forth. So you can go ahead and request. I did see a couple of hands up earlier on and they were put down, but we're heading into our Q&A session right now for those who would like to ask questions.
All right. I think we have 20 minutes left. So if anybody need to ask a question, can raise your hand or you can request the mic. Yeah. Thank you, Yoyada and Kulibali, for a great insight. I think we're gonna have still waiting to see if somebody want to ask a question, or you have a suggestion, or you have something to say about the topic. Otherwise, we'll have only maybe closing remarks for this space. Next 10 minutes, I think. Yeah. So thank you. Eric, yes, please be brief and short. Go ahead. Eric?
Yes, thank you for giving me the time to talk. Thank you for the speakers. My question is about I am Rwandan, and today and tomorrow we start to remember 31 years of the genocide in Rwanda. So I heard you mentioned genocide in Congo. You mentioned people who are committing genocide. You mentioned people who are denying the genocide in Congo. So I would like to know if this is something that has already been proven by any court of justice, or if this is just something that's going to happen. And what is the role of the justice, the government of Congo, to make sure that this is going to go in the right way so that all the perpetrators who committed genocide and other crimes in Congo be persecuted? Because we also know that the government of Congo have mentioned to take this matter into their hands. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I think you're addressing this question to Bojan, right? Okay. Bojan, can you?
Yeah, to the two speakers.
All right. Thank you. Good. Bojan, can you go ahead and answer the question?
Sure. I think there are several questions within the question. The first one is, what is the evidence that there is an ongoing genocide? There are many. A lot of warnings have been published and stated. Again, I mentioned the November 2022 statement that former UN Undersecretary General Alice Nderitu has issued, warning that the Congolese Tutsi and the Banyamulenge communities are facing targeted ethnic persecution with a high risk of escalation to genocide. Um, I have personally myself interviewed several, maybe hundreds of people who have told their own stories about persecution based on who they are, on their identity, and what they do also in terms of their socioeconomic activity. I think it's common knowledge. In addition to that, there are, in terms of the justice system itself or the justice accountability, there are, like, as Undersecretary General Alice Deritu has said it today in the international conferences, there are over 500 indicted genocide perpetrators who are currently in Congo. And as we know, and this is something also that I have myself witnessed after interviewing the former G2, so the person responsible for the intelligence of FDLR FOCA, who himself explained how they created groups like Niatura that have recruited Congolese extremists to target Congolese Tutsi. There are many ways that this genocide has been ongoing, whether it's through the taxing system, whether it's through attacks. I think the recent October 2023 attack on the Turo village in Masisi is a perfect example of an attempt at exterminating an entire village of 300 homes that were burned to ashes. So I think that the evidence is there. Of course, there is a narrative, denialist narrative that is ongoing in Kinshasa by the DRC government, like as I said before, that has been facilitating these genociders coming from Rwanda, but also local armed groups to target Congolese Tutsi. And the way that these denialist campaigns are taking place are through different campaigns. I think that you somewhat implied that they want to take things into their hands. The campaigns like Genocoast, the campaigns like Sasufi, or even Denis Mukwege's campaign talking about rape as a weapon of war, are denialist campaigns that refuse to name the perpetrator and the victim because they're not taking action, each one of them. When Patrick Mouyaya, the Minister of Communication of DRC, talks about ça suffit, ça suffit is a phrase that was used by Charles Nana, who was convicted for genocide denial in France in a French court last December. The idea of ça suffit is distorted. What we are not really showing is that the actual community that is being targeted is the one that has been victim for 30 years. So It is a common strategy, denial strategy, to shift the blame from perpetrator to victim. It is a common strategy to use the double genocide theory, which Genocost is. I think Grace earlier mentioned about pictures that are being used of victims used from one place and talking about other victims. One perfect example is Genocost was using last year pictures of Hema victims, hundreds of them killed by Codeco, using the same pictures to talk about Genocos, which of course is targeting, it's is using the double genocide theory, accusing Rwanda of having committed a genocide against Hutu, which of course is a way of denying genocide. We've seen the ambassador, the UN mission, the Congolese UN mission mission to the UN, and the ambassador talking about that there are more victims in Congo, and talking about how the genocide started when the Habyarimana's plane was shot, which of course is one of the other theories that are being used, talking about a spontaneous reaction rather than a planned project of extermination. I think you actually, Eric, just earlier used genocide in Rwanda rather than using the proper name, which is genocide against the Tutsi. We don't call the Holocaust genocide in Germany. Therefore, it does not. Um, it's not the appropriate way to call what happened in Rwanda, especially because we know that this blurred line between victim and perpetrator is being used as a denialist strategy. And I think I answered more or less all of your questions.
Yeah. Thank you again, Bajan. I was going through, I think his account. Eric, I think my brother, you're just ignoring the truth, Eric, because all this evidence, basic evidence in Congo, it's eminent. You can see that. We see a lot of videos. We see a lot of local leaders in Congo calling, to killing Tutsi. Some of the uh, high position ministers. I myself, I'm not an expert in the Congo issue, but we've been seeing a lot of stuff in social media. So my brother Ngoga, you need to reflect on that and be honest. There's a lot of evidence actually. And it's still going on. They're still killing all these Tutsi, those Hemas, those Banyamulenge, and those from Masisi and Ruchuru. So thank you so much, Bojan, for great insight. And do they have anybody here who want to answer, Mr. Goga? Johan? Yes.
Let me add.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let me add to this.
Yeah.
And you touched on it. There are actual refugees from the Congo who fled exactly that hate speech. And to your point, it was covered, and there was social media to that. In the murky environment, the lack of peace in the Congo today, at least in the several days past, does not allow for um, investigations to take place, and especially now that you have these European countries who are basically co-opted into the Congolese narrative and seeing Rwanda as a country, as a perpetrator in the Congo that's creating the chaos. So it creates a buffer or a protective wall against the perpetrators to be able to undertake the rigorous investigations of what they're doing. So to your point, unless somebody just wants to ignore the facts, you can look the other way. But the fact is there's enough evidence. People do not take refuge when they're at peace. And so for the chaos that does not allow for appropriate investigations, the chaos that is ongoing, not resolved yet, and we see where the world leaders are, besides their own, when things settle down, I hope sooner than later, these individuals that have caused these atrocities will be brought to justice. And I hope they do face justice, because the genocide in the in the DRC against the Tutsi is real. As long as FDLR is in the Congo, fighting side by side with the Congolese and all these other mercenaries or whoever else is in the Congo, as long as those people are there targeting, you have not seen Kasai or Luba or other tribes in the Congo taking refuge in Uganda or Brazzaville or Rwanda. You are seeing Rwanda phones running. Yamulenge is running out of Congo because they're being run out by the Congolese. So to you, Eric, and the others who may not be quite clear on this, those are the facts. I thank you again for the question. Thank you.
And I also just want to add that, you know, if you do want to see for yourself, if you go to Congo today, I don't think you'd be the exception to the rule, sir. You would also be a target. So if you want to test out our theory in person and in real life, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Grace. Actually, I was just jumping into. You can take a little, just a water. Um, yeah, I'm waiting one more question. If there's no question, I think hopefully Eric, your question was answered. So I just have a quick communication. We have a Rwanda convention is coming this July. I'm just reminding you guys we have a uh, Rwanda convention is going to be in Dallas, Texas. So whoever want to join us in Dallas, Texas this July, please, I'm gonna put on dashboard registration and yeah, it'll be like uh, uh, couple of information. All the information is packed on the email. I'm gonna or like the tweet I'm gonna put on dashboard. So whoever wanna join us, July 4th to 6th, I think, 2025 this year. Thank you so much. So please join us, so we can, Dallas, Texas. One more question, please. Again, follow One Nation Radio or Quelly Times. We always have all these spaces every Sunday. We have different guests, different topics. I think this the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we're gonna stick on the Quibuka 31st. So next week we're gonna have more guests, and we really appreciate Honorable Ambassador, appreciate Bojan and Yehoyada. So if you have any question, please DM me, or using my account Bahati Kalisa. You can see that. I'm just using Quelly Times, but you can still use DM me on Bahati Kalisa. So please, let's follow each other. So a lot of people also asking me where's the space. So if you don't follow one of these accounts, it's really hard to find all these active spaces. Yeah, go ahead, Bojan. I see you raise the hand.
Yes, I just wanted to add, I think one really, really important thing to add, whether it's in relation to the question that we had, but also in what is going on. The discourse on this conflict is another evidence of the issue that is at stake, which is the targeting and the persecution of a particular group. When we hear that all the blame or all the root causes of the conflict are not being exposed by the media, by the diplomats, by the dignitaries that are going in and out of the continent, we understand that the problem is being displaced and that there is an attempt at creating issues in the wrong place. One of them, when we analyze discourse, is to see at what kind of language or what kind of expressions are being used in communications, in international meetings, in the media. For example, the mantra M23 backed by Rwanda. So we before that we had the war or the M23 war. Um, M23 was not there for the past 30 years. And while FDLR has been there, we've been targeting, we've been describing this conflict or describing the situation, even now the regional conflict between Rwanda and Congo, although it is somewhat of a cold conflict rather than an actual armed conflict, has been defined with the wrong terms that show how, once again, the victim group is being targeted. When we talk about agression rwandaise, when we talk about just even the looting of the minerals and the economic interest and the financial interest, we realize again how this is a distortion of reality. To give you an example, 97% of the mineral resources in Congo are controlled by Kinshasa. So when we're accusing Rwanda, when we're using M23 as being a proxy of Rwanda to loot the minerals of Congo, it makes no sense when the reality shows something different. Again, when we talk about this conflict being the war of, or the M23 war, we're denying the fact that FDLR has been there. We should maybe call it the FDLR war. We forget the fact that M23 are composed of Congolese citizens, unlike FDLR, which has been creating settlement colonies in eastern Congo, and which is a foreign group. We've had the most of the violence being committed by the ADF, which is supported by the Islamic State. We've had Codeco also killing people, the Hema community members for the past 10 years. So this entire distortion of narrative is just by itself a perfect proof that there is a genocide, an ongoing genocide. It's a perfect way to displace the issue. It's a perfect way to also not talk about the problems of governance that led to the creation of M23 today, fighting for its survival and the survival of the targeted communities. And again, I think we mentioned earlier the refugees. The refugees, there are close to 1 million refugees in the neighboring countries that are unable to go back to Eastern Congo, that are considered as being foreigners. This language has been used before by the colonizers. It's been used within the Hamitic myth as the theory of the Bantu versus Nilotics, when Bantu is actually just the fact of belonging to a family, a linguistic family, which is being a Bantuphone, and everybody within that region is a Bantuphone. So this entire language distortion and narrative that has changed reality is one of the perfect pieces of evidence that something is going on and that it needs to be tackled and addressed at its roots. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, let me just, yeah, we call them online appreciation. So thank you so much. We are running out of time actually, but for real, we're gonna have more discussion. I really appreciate a lot of people I see here. Uh, I see more guests like friends and friends of Rwanda. A lot of them in the audience. Thank you for coming. Again, you can see on dashboard. I just put the event information. Rwanda Convention USA. We're gonna have a huge event coming in July. So please register yourself. If you have any information, you can DM me using my account here, Bahati Kalisa. You can use my account if you need more information. So please register and save your date. Everybody, whoever who is in Canada, who is in US, or anywhere, if you need invitation, so please contact us. And we have the organizer manager. I see him down here, Manu. I see him here down here. I don't know if you can, if you have time, you can just come a little bit, just for more information. Um, uh, Grace, I think we have the last, closing remarks for our guests. Let me pass the mic to you again. Again, guys, please follow One Nation Radio, follow Ukweli Times, and we have one more media, Rwanda Broad. So it's a diaspora media actually. So we Bojan, we're gonna need you more as a high decorated journalist. I saw actually your interview was between you and Beta Bisimwa, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, I watched the interview. It was really amazing. I saw you. I didn't see your face. Actually, I was just seeing your back interviewing Beltrame Simo. So thank you
Mhm.
so much. Actually, yeah. So we're gonna have more discussion, more engagement on these topics. Yeah. So before we have a closing remarks for our guests, let me pass a mic to Manu. Manu, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Bahati. Thank you for the host. Thank you for the guests. It was a great panel. We learned so much, and thank you for your work, especially uh, Professor Bojana. You are doing an extremely good job by providing evidence and more information regarding what is happening in the region, especially in the DRC. It's a long and confusing events happening now. But by putting the light on the situation, it makes more easier for those in the West to learn what is happening. So I came here and I was listening to Eric, the one who just left, and you can tell who he is by his demeanor. But again, it's part of the job, for our job, to make sure that we put up, we expose those who are trying to deny, and who go around and speak the and make up stories that which does not happen. But when someone has that kind of background with huge family members who had something to do with the genocide against the Tutsi, in a preparation of it since then, the 70s, you can tell the job is to make sure they deny and try to, put it in the wrong direction. So thank you, President Yeho, also for the intervention. And the host, you guys are doing an amazing job. One Nation Radio, Ukweli Times. You guys, you are the light in the sky. You are the stars in the sky to put light and shining on people. Really, we appreciate you. So yes, I just came up to add on. Bahati just said about the Rwanda Convention, US, coming up in July. It's on July 4th weekend. So the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th, where this is a community-based, community-prepared, community-organized event, where we are trying to make sure all the Rwandans and the Friends of Rwanda partners come together, and we commemorate the end of the genocide against the Tutsi by celebrating the Liberation Day, by celebrating our culture, by looking at what can we do as a diaspora to make sure that we promote our homeland here where we live. So by putting all the businesses together, all the partners, either governmental partners here in the US or back home, or the private sector, to get together so that we can see how we can emancipate ourselves out of the poverty as we do out of the neo-colonialism. So we do that, we can have that kind of gathering, but we can't do that without knowing our own history. So we will have different panels. We emphasize on our culture, on our youth, on our businesses. Of course, people have fun as well. We have vibrant and well-known stars who will be here to make sure that they play good music. People have fun, and so they have fun as they learn as well. So everybody, we urge you to get more information at www dot rwandaconventionus.com, or you can follow us on Instagram or on Facebook, or you can follow me on you can DM me if you have any question at my account here. So we welcome everybody. We urge you to bring a friend, and even those who need to learn more about our culture, our history, and what's going on around the region. We are all welcome. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak, Bahati. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Manuel. Actually, he's the president of Rwanda community in Dallas, Texas. So if you once have a chance to pass in Dallas, Texas, please, yeah, he's the guy. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, and really appreciate. I see. Uh, the time is our enemy. Time is our enemy. But I don't. I'm gonna pass the mic back to Grace. I know I took your time, Grace, but I wanted you to take some break and get some water. So now I think you're good to go. So you can get the mic back, Grace.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank our speakers today and everyone who participated as well. And as we reflect during this Kwibuka period, a big part of the conversation today was centered around being reminded um, on the politics of memory, and it's a battle that we cannot afford to lose, and acknowledging that like language plays a crucial role in shaping how we remember, and in many cases it as we see, it's being used as a tool to distort reality. um, with terms like double genocide, they're very inaccurate. They are deliberate attempts to turn perpetrators into victims, to erase the truth of the genocide against the Tutsis, and to fuel hate and division. This distortion is harmless. It undermines the truth, it diminishes the suffering of the victims, and allows the perpetrators to escape accountability, essentially. And when we continue to allow this manipulation of language to further political agendas, we are compromising the integrity of history itself and enabling a future where such atrocities are taking root, as we are seeing in Congo today. And as we go into the Kwibuka period tomorrow, I pray for healing and comfort for all the survivors. May they find strength and peace, and may we as a global community continue to uphold their voices and ensure that their stories are never forgotten, and that we remain committed to truth, reconciliation, and justice. And these are my parting words, and I'll pass it on to my the speakers today if they want to give their parting remarks before we wrap up the space today.
Thank you so much again for organizing this space. I think it's important that we do reflect, remember, and think about ways to rebuild the future, especially a future that is welcoming to all of us in different parts of the world. The meaning of Ubuntu is important, and we've seen too much division. The fight against racism as a whole is a struggle that never ends. And overall, it's the same issue that we've been saying since the colonial times. So I think we need to work together to fight against ideology that divides us. And every year, it's important that we use Kwibuka to be able to gather, to remember, to commemorate, and to honor those who have sacrificed their lives for a better future for our children and for the generations to come. I do want to also um, celebrate and congratulate all of you for all the efforts on a daily basis for fighting against genocide denial, against genocide ideology, and also for the countries that are taking measures into their hands to be able to develop for the younger generations to go forward. And I'm thinking here about Rwanda and its leadership and all the people who are contributing to building this society that has transformed from a genocide to what it has become today. Thank you again to you, Grace, and your colleagues. And thank you also to President Yehoyada of the U.S. community.
Oh, thank you very much, Professor Bojana, and to the team, the Ukweli Times, One Nation Radio, Grace, great job. I want to leave you with this. Today, the Armenian genocide is still being debated. 100 and I think 10 years out, if not more. I think it happened in 1915. The Jewish Holocaust is also, there's somebody who tried to deny it. I happen to have had the privilege of being a co-president of the Alliance for the Study of the Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Sonoma State University. And we put on these lectures every January through May to bring in genocide scholars, only so that they can remind us that these things happen and there's always someone who tries to reframe, negate, and do these denials. We are commemorating for the 31st time the genocide against the Tutsis in Rwanda. I want to caution us and to just invite us to all be vigilant, seek to understand, because if we do not tell the story 100 years from today, somebody will still be trying to say it never happened or distort it in their way. So it is great. It is a great task that each one of us can actually play a role. Let's be informed. And having come to this conversation today, I thank you. The moderator was wonderful, and I hope that you continue to seek to learn. And may we all, in the next 100 days, find a Rwandan, whether it's a neighbor, a relative. Let's comfort one another, and let them realize that we are with them through this pain. And may we all be better for having been advocates to tell the world that it happened. We have physical victims, and perpetrators need to face justice wherever they may be. I thank you again, and God bless you.
Thank you all. So next week we will be back here and we're going to be focusing more on Kwibuka 31. So make sure you follow One Nation, Ukweli Times, Yehoyada, Bojana to see the work that they're doing, as well as registering for this year's upcoming Rwanda convention as well. Feel free to message any of the hosts on this stage in regards to questions that you might have about registering for the convention. Thank you all. We'll see you all next week.
Yeah, Grace, thank you so much. You too, I really appreciate you. As I told you every time, you're the best moderator I ever have. Thank you. You are doing amazing. I see a lot of positive comments coming in my DM. Thank you so much, Grace. Thank you, Bojan. Nice to meet you again. Thank you, Yehoyada, and thank you, of course, our ambassador Matilda Mkanawan. Yeah, she had another meeting, and but I see Vitar. Vitar is here for on behalf of her. So thank you, Vitar, for being here with us. Thank you. I see a lot of people. I see Kennedy Wandera. Thank you for being with us. He's a good journalist from Kenya. Thank you, Kennedy Wandera. I see you here. I see Fatuma Najiza. I see a lot of people here. Thank you, different people. I see a lot of community leaders here. Thank you, Manu. Thank you so much. So see you next week, Sunday. Every Sunday we always have this kind of session, but we're gonna stick on Quibuka 31st. Again, it's better to follow One Nation Radio, Ukweli Times, and Rwanda Abroad. Rwanda Abroad is another platform actually, but these days I don't think it's busy. But it's another platform we joined together for bringing all these spaces. Yeah, thank you so much, and see you next week. Twibuke twiyubaka. Yeah, thank you.